In the town of Azurville, residents know two things to be true. One, those who are born in Azurville die in Azurville. Two, those who die in Azurville stay in Azurville.
We all live in a yellow submarine. I'm just playing. But really think about it, though. If we all just lived in one big submarine, would we even know the difference? Whose world is this, anyway? I remember the first time I heard that song. I was about 5 years old. I don't think about it much. Most of the songs I listened to at that age had monsters singing about numbers and ABCs. You just don't question things as a kid. Then, when I was a teenager, I found the CD in the back of a music store. It was the last copy, and I thought, why not? I played that song over and over again once I got home, reliving the nostalgia high I got as a kid. I wondered what it would be like to have seen these guys in concert, to have been in the same room as the people who had written one of my favorite songs. But their time as stars had ended decades ago. We have some dead actors and singers who still perform here, but mostly once they've died, they decide it's time to retire. There's this bar I used to go to Friday nights, and about once a month they did an open mic, and this really cute guy would come in. I never asked him out. He was like 30, but still a really cute guy with long curly hair and a perfect jawline, and he would come in and play the guitar, singing for hours. I would order my cup of ginger ale and just watch him the whole time. Then one night, word got out that he had overdosed and spiraled real quick. He was dead by morning. The bar was still willing to let him perform, said that he could sing and someone else could play the guitar, but he refused. Playing the guitar was his life, his words, apparently. He just took the opportunity to spend more time with his girlfriend. Tough break. I stopped going to the bar after that, not because I was so upset that he had stopped playing, although I was, but I didn't want to become so attached to another performer just for them to go the same route. My sister always told me I needed a sense of direction. I told her that the world needed a place to go first. I grew up in the forgotten side of Azurville. There's the urban parts, what the locals call downtown, the rural, where it's mostly farmlands, and the suburban, which took up most of the town. Then there was us, smack in the middle of an abandoned lot which no politician bothered to clean up or renovate. They called this part the Scabs, and referred to most of us as scabbers, although rarely to our faces. Our one-bedroom apartment, home to 4 people and about a dozen ghosts. Most of them were past occupants who had refused to leave, so newer tenants just built their lives around them. That was the case with ours as well. We had only a few old people residing in our walls, hissing at us. I thought these were the voices in my head for the first few years of my life. People talked about having an inner monologue. I thought mine was just meaner than most. Stupid little girl, they would whisper about me. Such a stupid little girl. Every time I made a mistake, whether it be on my homework or with chores or anything I did for fun, that was the first phrase I told myself. Stupid little girl, you're such a stupid little girl. My sister told me to ignore them, but those were the voices I had listened to all my life. Hard to ignore all you've ever known. Besides, it wasn't as though our grandparents were much better. I had never met my actual parents. Apparently they had split around the time my sister had been in preschool. She said that she remembered their names, but not their faces. They went to jail soon after I was born, and now, who knows? Our grandparents took us in, despite how cramped their apartment was. But it was a roof, right? They were retired and lived off of any checks they got because of us. They always complained about not having enough money, at least when it came to stuff we wanted. No Christmas presents this year, not enough money. Yet whenever they wanted something, it was no object. Maybe it wasn't so bad. Growing up there, I wouldn't know. It's the only life I had ever known. My school was much smaller than the ones around town, but For the end of our senior year of high school, we were promised one field trip out of here. We would be visiting the downtown area with all the local celebrities who filmed Dancing with Nobility. I grew up with that show. I mean, everyone grew up with that show. Everyone had a mom or a grandma or an aunt who was obsessed, and come Tuesday and Thursday evenings, that show was on. It wasn't a bad show, just one we knew whether we liked it or not. I remember my grandma would spend time watching her stories while my grandpa would spend his evenings yelling at sports. Anytime the news was on, it was always covering something that was happening in other parts of town. The mayor was building a new highway, the crops weren't growing as expected, downtown prices were skyrocketing. No one ever talked about us. So, yeah, not as exciting of a trip as, like, going to a concert, but it was an excuse to get out of the scabs, right? See what was so important that it was the only thing TV ever talked about. That was where I met God. So, we're walking around the town, and we're seeing shops and stuff, and we all stopped to get food, and then headed off to the record studios where they made Dancing with Nobility. It was something to go and see all the stars I had grown up with over the years. Like, I knew they were real, but it was like they were more than human or something, standing before me, as though they were from another world. With their fancy costumes and jewelry, they might as well have been. I bet those people had never spent a night lying in bed hungry while ghosts whispered in your ears about how stupid you were. Since we were at the recording studio, the producers gave the class a treat and had us end off the day with a movie. It was a real long one, and halfway through I had noticed that a lot of the kids had ended up leaving, but I couldn't take my eyes off of it. It was an older film, and the characters are all slaves, and they said things about a promised land. Isn't that something? Like just leaving everything you know behind and going out into the world. I couldn't even leave my side of town for a concert. I met God during that movie screening. Not the one in the film, although I had plenty of questions about him too. I mean, he was sitting next to me in the theater. He came in with a big Slurpee and a gallon of popcorn, consuming it all so loudly I could hardly hear the characters talk. I turned to glare at him while he was mid-slurp, but he just looked at me and pointed the straw in my direction. I know most people would have been grossed out by the thought of sharing drinks with a stranger, but I had grown up splitting drinks with everyone in my house. Can't be any grosser than backwash from your grandpa. That was when I started looking at the guy offering it to me. I realized that he actually didn't look that old. In fact, he looked about my age, or maybe a few years ahead. And with his crooked smile and messy hair, he was actually kind of cute. So I took hold of the straw and sipped away. It was cold and sweet and the most delicious thing I had ever tried. I sat back and held it in my mouth, not wanting to swallow and ending the moment. These effects were considered revolutionary at the time, the guy whispered over to me. I looked back at him, subtly not even caring that he was interrupting. When did they shoot this? In between seasons of Dancing with Nobility? He smiled and chuckled, I guess thinking I was kidding at first, but when my face stayed serious, he switched up his tone. No, this was shot in Hollywood. What's that? It's like where they make all the best movies. It's where the big celebrities go to live. It's like the Promised Land. The what? I pointed at the screen. The Promised Land, like in the film. It was then that someone a few seats behind shushed at us. I could feel my cheeks grow hot with embarrassment. The guy continued to nudge at me. He leaned in real close so I could smell the Slurpee and popcorn on his breath. My cheeks grew even hotter. You want to get out of here? I wanted to see the end of the movie. I wanted to see the main character set his people free and take them across the desert to the Promised Land. But I also wanted to learn more about Hollywood, the apparent promised land of our own. I nodded, and before I knew it, he had grabbed my hand and pulled me up. We both ducked down our heads so we wouldn't be in the way of the projector. He still held on to me as we exited the building and went around the corner. The streets were full of cars and lights, and I felt comfortable being out here alone with this boy as long as there were plenty of witnesses around. I remember hearing once that crime was higher in urban places like this. But I wondered how that could be true when there were so many people around to watch what was happening. Besides, he wasn't the first boy I had snuck around with, but all of those had been boys I had grown up with and on my side of town. This one was a complete stranger. Something about that was oddly thrilling for me. It was then that I realized I didn't know this boy's name. He told me I was Tommy, and I said my name was Laura. At first, we just talked about the movie. He asked what I liked about it, and I said I liked the idea of everyone getting away from their shitty life. He asked where I had grown up, and I told him I was from the Scabs. Said it was me, my sister, and my grandparents. Well, not really my sister, because she had spent a lot of time in juvie, but still. I asked him the same thing, but he didn't reply. Instead, he asked a question I wasn't expecting. Do you believe in God? I didn't know how to reply to him at first. Eventually, I just said, which one? He shrugged. I don't really think God can be put into a box to understand. Like, in the movie, he's this burning bush talking to people, but I just mean, like, the concept of God. I don't know. Why? Do you? Don't you ever wonder where we all come from? I didn't really understand the question again. I said that I came from my mom and dad, but I guess by the way he was laughing at me, that was the wrong answer. I didn't want to stand there and be insulted, so I decided to try and make my way back into town. No, wait, I'm sorry. I could hear his footsteps approaching me. He made a grab for my wrist and spun me around. His eyes seemed to sparkle in the moonlight. He was beautiful. I didn't mean to make you upset. You seem like a real smart girl. I just wanted to get to know you better is all. Come on, let's keep talking. Please? Smart girl. All my life, ghosts had whispered in my head about what a stupid girl I was. They'd probably say that right now if they were here. Stupid little girl running off with a boy. Stupid little girl. My sister told me not to listen to them, but she always treated me like a kid to be taken care of. What would she say now if she saw me like this? Did I care? This boy thought I was a smart girl. First person in the world to say that to me. Could he be right? I thought about turning back and getting myself into town. That was what I was supposed to do. But I honestly didn't want to. I wanted to stay and talk to this boy. I shifted my wrist in his grip so that my hand was cupped inside of his instead. Okay. He smiled as he led me back down the woods path. He went on and on about how in ancient times people believed that there was an afterlife. He said that this was the land of the living and that there was also a land of the dead, and when people died, they were supposed to cross over. It all sounded like a fairy tale to me. I had met plenty of ghosts growing up, including the short time my sister and I were in foster care. I don't remember anything about it, but she said the family had an assortment of dead children. Tommy seemed really passionate about the subject, though. So, did ancient people not see ghosts or something? I was scared that he would laugh at my question, but he took it seriously. He said that there was something about this town which had been disconnected from the land of the dead, and that was why all the ghosts were still here. I asked him what would happen to have caused such a thrift, but he didn't know. He had ideas, but nothing concrete. I found myself becoming pretty skeptical at this point. It was a nice thought, I suppose. It would be less crowded. It would be sad, though. Why is that? Well, the family that fostered my sister and I, they had dead children. I mean, yeah, it's sad that they don't get to grow up or nothing, but I mean, at least they're still here. It would be sad if people went away altogether just because they died. He nodded, but I'm not sure he agreed with me. It would also depend on which place you ended up. Huh? Don't you just go to the land of the dead? No, there's two lands. One for good people and one for bad people. Who gets to decide that? God. I don't know why I was still indulging him, but the concept had piqued my interest. I think by most people's standards I would have been considered a bad person. At least that's what all my teachers had said about me. My grandparents called me and my sister a waste of space, but I guess she was a bad person too, considering everything she had done. I don't know. I felt like I just did what I needed to do in order to survive. Did that mean someone had the right to choose if I was bad enough to be sent somewhere horrible forever? I asked him how he knew all of this stuff, and he said it came from books he read and his group of friends. Then he pointed at his head. And the voice from in here. The voice?
Yeah, voice of God. He tells me things directly.
I remembered how I thought the ghosts in our walls were voices in my head for a long time. There probably was something talking to Tommy. How do you know it's God?
Because everything he says is true.
Suddenly we came to a stop. I peered around to see what we were looking at, but it seemed to just be a dead end. I could see a cliff inches in front of us. Tommy kept staring off into it too. Finally, he told me to take a step forward. I laughed, even though I knew he wasn't joking. Then I frowned and asked if he was crazy, and didn't he see the cliff right there?
You can't go that way.
Yeah, no shit.
No, I mean, this place stops you if you try.
What are you talking about? He pointed at the cliff.
Take a step.
You first. I said this thinking that he would back down and we would return to town, but he just shrugged and stepped right out. I let out a shriek, expecting to see his body roll off and down the cliff, but he remained standing, one leg extended, as though something were holding him up. I looked at his feet, wondering what he was doing to pull off this trick, but I saw nothing. After a few seconds, he stood up straight once more.
Now you try.
I was still skeptical, I won't lie, but I was curious. I didn't step out, though. I just reached my hand over and felt what I can only describe as a wall of cold. Like, you know when a sprinkler is on and you feel the water spraying down? It was sort of like that, yet somehow both lighter and more solid. I couldn't move past a certain point. I felt my eyes growing wide as Tommy laughed. I finally pulled my hand back. What is this?
I told you, it's a barrier. What's severing us from crossing over to the land of the dead?
But we're still alive.
Yeah, but trust me, a ghost has no better luck getting over.
How do you know?
I've seen it.
I was weirded out for sure, but I still wasn't quite ready to believe his theory. There had to be some sort of weather phenomenon or another explanation as to why we couldn't pass right here. I just didn't see what it had to do with the dead. But I wanted to know more all the same. Then he asked if I wanted to stay here forever after I died. I didn't know how to answer. I had never realized there were other options. Started thinking about it. Being able to leave. Get away from our dirty and cramped apartment in the Scabs. I had always assumed that I'd be going to our town cemetery or staying behind in that tiny apartment taking care of my grandparents' ghosts. Just all of us, one big, unhappy family trapped forever inside those tiny walls. Anything sounded better than that. But what if I ended up in the bad place? What if it was even worse than where I currently was? Did I want to risk that? How do you even know such a place exists? He gave me a smile right then, a large one that made his teeth shone. He really was handsome. He reached into his pocket and pulled something out, handing it over to me. I looked down and wasn't surprised to see a pill. I see. He was just a junkie. That made sense. I told him no thanks and that I wanted to go home.
Wait, I thought you wanted to see where we go after death.
We don't go anywhere. We stay right here. The facts are plain and simple.
Then why are there so many stories of people being able to leave? Even in the movie, the pharaoh couldn't bring his son back. Where did they get that idea?
I had never thought of that before. I recalled the band I had listened to as a child and how some of the members were dead. I had just assumed that they couldn't play anymore because they had retired or something. But did people outside of Azurville really leave when they died? I found myself stopping and walking back over to him. He held out the pill and I started to think, why not? Free highs don't happen every day. What was the worst thing that could happen to me? Nothing worse than what my life had already amounted to. So I took it and swallowed it down. Now what? He laid on the grass.
Now we wait.
I took a spot next to him and gazed out as I waited for everything to kick in. We sat in silence until the stars started to swirl and shift, coming closer as giant balls of light, reaching out to kiss me. I puckered up my lips and floated towards them. I'd rather hoped for a kiss from Tommy, but if the stars wanted to kiss me, then who was I to deny it? Speaking of, just where was he? I had already begun to fly away into the sky. Was he still on Earth? His loss, I suppose. The stars were beautiful, and there was no stopping their course. They sailed past me as tails of light followed them. "Come join us," they whispered as they fell. "Come join us forever." It was warm and bright as I floated off. I wondered where the stars wanted me to go. I soon got my answer as a pair of pearly gates appeared before me. A man stood in front of them. He looked familiar, kind of like the man from the movie I had just been watching, except his skin was different. Instead of being made of flesh, he appeared to be made of gold. He stood directly at the center of the gate, a sword in his hand. "Are you the gatekeeper?" I asked, not even sure how I knew that word. He nodded in response. I looked down at the sword he was holding. "May I go in?" I'm not sure if that was the correct thing to ask, as he could have used his weapon to kill me at any time. Or maybe he knew I was still alive and therefore wouldn't be allowed inside. He might kick me off the edge, and this time I would fall down, down, down. Where would my soul end up then? But to my amazement, he moved to the side and the gates opened up. I walked on in. I didn't know the world could be so colorful. I didn't know the air could smell so fresh or that the sky could be so blue. It was as if I had finally woken up. As though since the day I was born, I had been coasting through life, surviving one day after another because nothing was ever so horrible that I felt the need to be drastic. But now I felt lighter than anything, as though whatever I dreamed could be accomplished. I was no longer held down by sleep or hunger. I only needed to be. That was when I met him. In the center of this land, the land of the dead, the good dead, was a bright and glowing light. It looked the way the sun did in the brief second you're able to see it before averting your gaze. Except looking at this light did nothing to harm my eyes. I approached it, knowing that was what it wanted me to do. "Are you God?" "Yes." "Am I dead?" "No, not yet. I still have much for you to do back on Earth." Earth. Just the thought of it made me want to cry. How could I possibly go back when everything around me was so wonderful? "Can't I stay here?" "Only if you do as I say." I nodded, eager to please. "Find a way to bring the souls out of Azurville. They have been trapped for far too long. It's up to you and others like you to show them the way and bring them home." Home. Yes, of course. It only made sense that this place would be their home. And then I was sinking into the floor. I knew what was happening. I was going back to Earth. Back home. Home. I had never noticed before just how ugly it was. Compared to this world, even the city seemed such a nasty place. I felt my body growing heavy all around me, pulling me down back to the earth. I could feel at once everything wrong with being alive. My stomach twisted from pain and hunger. My eyes were sore and swollen, and then my tongue scratched at my mouth. I coughed and sputtered, unable to raise myself under the weight of my frame until Tommy pulled me up and offered me his water bottle. "So, what'd you think?" How could I possibly sum it up into words? I had never imagined such a place could or should exist. That beings like that existed, and now I was supposed to just talk about it? Carry on as though everything about my world hadn't changed forever? I had so many questions. How did Tommy come across this pill, and why did it lead us out of Azurville? What could we possibly do to get the souls out of this place? How would we be able to go back? Everything went black. The next thing I knew, I was waking up in a bed I didn't recognize, with a savory smell in the air. I pulled the sheets back and saw that my clothes were still on, at least. My head split in two as I tried to get up, and I nearly vomited right there. I had to lie back down and swallow before I felt calm again. I laid there for who knows how long. But the sun was in a different position than when I woke up, so I took that as a sign that at least a few hours had gone by. I heard the door creak open.
Oh, hey, you're up.
I found sitting in bed to be a lot easier the second attempt. He handed me a tray of food and I happily ate it down. Where am I?
My house. Well, it's not really my house, it's everyone's house.
He took my hand and led me out of bed. My cheeks burned at the gentleness of the action. I remembered how handsome he was. He took me out of the room and into a hallway. The house was bigger than any I had been in before, but in every other way it reminded me of where I had grown up. The walls were stained and torn, and the carpet smelled horrendous in every way possible, and there was a draft which seemed to come from all over. Are we back in the Scabs?
Yeah, it's pretty much the only place where we're allowed to commune.
As we kept walking down the hallway, someone passed us. No one I recognized, but then again, why would I? I mean, I did know everyone from our part of town. It was so small, it was hard not to. Then another person passed us, and another, until we ended up in a larger room that was full of people. They were all sitting down on the floor. They seemed to be looking at something, but at my angle, I couldn't tell what it was. Tommy took me to a free space and we sat down. What's going on?
Shh, you'll see.
An older woman looked over at us. She pointed at me.
Welcome, Laura. Tommy has told us so much about his new friend.
For some reason, the word friend didn't sit well with me. It felt simultaneously too formal and not formal enough. We had shared an experience last night, unlike any I ever had before. Friend was just not the title I wanted him to have for me. But when he flashed me another one of his great smiles, I just returned it as best I could and then peered ahead. A man stood in the middle of the crowd, his hands outstretched. "Good morning, my children."
Good morning, Leader of Light.
I wonder what that meant. Who was this man that the others listened to him? Had he also gone to the other side and met God? Had God told him the same things he told Tommy and me? That we needed to get the souls out of this place? I still wondered how we were going to accomplish that. I tried to lean over, but Tommy shushed me. "Today is a very special day indeed. First, we will welcome our newest to the group." I was surprised when this man turned to me and held out his hand. "Laura, please stand and be recognized." Everyone clapped and turned towards me expectantly, even Tommy. I didn't know what else to do, so I stood up. I almost felt the urge to take a tiny little bow, but felt stupid enough just standing there for everyone to gawk at. Yet as I stood, my eyes caught sight of what it was everyone had gathered around for. In the center of the room was a man. He was laying down on the floor. No, not laying. He was tied to the floor. It took me a moment to notice the ropes holding him in place, because the first thing I had seen about him was the fact that he had been stripped. The second was that he had a strange symbol scribbled across his bare chest, and one that had been scrawled in red paint. At least, it looked like paint. I didn't sit back down as much as my legs gave way and I fell. Somehow I felt even worse now than I did when I had first woken up. The room began to spin and my body couldn't decide between throwing up or passing out or both. I felt a hand on my shoulder.
Hey, what's wrong?
My emotions set themselves straight as I turned to glare at him. What's wrong? What's wrong? Do you not see what they have up there? A few people in front began to shush us, just like in the movie theaters, as the leader continued. I kept my focus on Tommy, but he only shook his head. I had to get out of here. I stared at the door we had walked into, which had been left open. Every cell in my body wanted me to run and keep running until I made it back to my grandparents' apartment, but if these people were willing to do what they were about to do, then who knows what they would do to me if I got up and left. I could feel the tears running down my cheek, and I continued to sit there. The leader was talking, but I couldn't hear a word he said. Couldn't hear anything except for the thudding of my own heart, thrumming against my chest so loud I thought it would burst. Tommy put his hand in mine again, and I wanted to move to express my repulsion, but I had been frozen in place. All of time was moving except for me. My brain connected long enough to see the leader hold up a knife, and I finally closed my eyes. Why do you hesitate? What was that? Was that real? You feel this way because you know he is the wrong one. God. It was God talking. I looked over at Tommy, and his eyes were wide and skin pale. He had heard it too. We closed our eyes again and listened. You both know the truth. The time has come to set me free. Then, peace. I don't mean nothing happened. I mean that everything else washed away. I could feel my body floating once more as the floor beneath me fell and I drifted upwards. Even Tommy's hand let go, and it was then that I opened my eyes to look around. Alone. I was utterly alone. In a world of darkness, but I didn't feel afraid. It was a comfort being in the dark, like shutting off the lights in your room before you fall asleep. Even though I couldn't see anything, I knew where I was. There was only one place this could be. But I hadn't taken anything before coming here. How could this happen? I wasn't dead, was I? I tried not to question it as I raised my arms above and floated upwards. Why fight it? Wasn't this place the most beautiful I had ever seen? Anywhere was better than where I was. And then I looked to the side and saw that Tommy was there with me. We floated upwards together. He reached out for my hand, and this time I was unafraid to take it, glad to have someone with me on this journey. I saw the gates once more, and we went to greet the gatekeeper, but he would not move aside. No matter what we said or pleaded, he remained firmly in place, to the point where I thought he might be a statue. Why won't you let us in? Because you have not done as instructed. You have not freed the souls from this barrier. But are we dead? No. And you will not be until your mission is complete. We can't die? No. Here he pointed at me, much like how the leader had. Just you. And he turned to point at Tommy. You know what must be done. Tommy gave no answer, but nodded solemnly. I went to ask him what that meant, but before I had a chance to, the floor beneath us vanished. Suddenly I was crashing, falling, the speed picking up faster and faster. I flailed my arms uselessly around. The air became hotter and hotter all around me. I was beginning to sweat, so much so that I wanted to remove my jacket despite the falling. Still, the heat only raised until I thought I might burst from it. I looked around for Tommy, but found him nowhere. I was alone again. I was alone, and I didn't know where I was or what to do. I even started to wish that I was back in the room with the cult. And I did the only thing I could do. I screamed. I'm not sure how I heard the voice over my own, but a whisper clear as day rang through my ears, asking, "Do you wish to stop?" Yes! I tried to be forthcoming with my yells, but my throat was already scratched up from my screaming. Strike a bargain with me. Images flashed before my mind. I saw hundreds of people lined up, all of them with that strange symbol on their chest. I hadn't noticed it before, so distracted by what it had been written with that I now saw what it was. It was shaped like an hourglass. The crowd kept growing, all with that symbol, and stepped forth one by one, taking out a knife and stabbing their own hearts. As they fell to the ground, a white light glowed beneath them. The portal must be made. Strike a bargain. Set me free, and we can set them all free. The vision changed. I saw the room I had been in only a few moments ago. I saw Tommy on the floor, shirt off, and me standing over him with the knife. No! I shook the image away. I convulsed and thrashed until I could feel the heat melt off of me like great chunks were falling from my bones. Then it was quiet. I opened my eyes to see that I had returned to the room, but I was no longer sitting in the back of it. I was standing front and center with everyone staring at me. My head darted around until I spotted Tommy close behind me. I wondered if he was thinking the same thing I was. Right at that moment, he nodded, and I knew we had shared the same experience. The leader approached us, demanding to know what was going on, but neither of us listened to him. He was a false prophet. If he hadn't been chosen right now to hear the voice of God, then he most likely never heard it at all. We both lunged at him, but it was Tommy who reached him first. He grappled the man to the ground. All the while the onlookers gawked and gaped. Useless little sheep. I took the opportunity to scream, "He's lying to you! He's been doing this all wrong!" Then I looked down at the man who was tied up. I bent over and began to tug on the ropes until the knots gave out. They were not very secure, I couldn't help but notice, as though they were unnecessary. I told him to get up and get out of here. It doesn't want him! Tommy managed to get the knife from the leader and shoved the man aside. His head hit the floor with a resounding crack. Tommy stood up then, holding out the knife like a trophy. The crowd gave no reaction. Their faces were wide with horror as they sat back and watched. We had to lead them. We had to open the portal. That was the only way to free all of their souls, but one sacrifice at a time wouldn't be enough for that. Set me free, and I can accomplish what you cannot. I looked at Tommy as these words were said, and he walked over to me and handed the knife. It was heavier than I was expecting, but he held back his arms, putting them behind his head, exposing his chest to me. I have seen things in my day, but I've never stabbed anyone before. I knew I could do it. I had come close several times. But those were people who deserved it, not someone I considered a friend. Still, the words of God rang through my ears, and I raised the knife high and brought it down. It sank into his skin, and as disgusting as it sounds, it reminded me of cutting into meat. I hated myself for thinking of it at that moment, but it was the only comparison I had. The crowd gasped as I did so. I kept going, all the while hearing the small voice. Set me free. Set me free. Set me free. Blood splattered everywhere. It sprayed into my face and nearly got into my eyes and mouth. I shut both and tried to wipe it off with my free hand, but it was so thick that it just spread around. Yet Tommy continued to stand. I don't know how many stabs it takes to kill someone, but how was he still standing? Then all at once, he dropped to the floor, useless, heaping like a pile of clothes. I walked over to him. Tommy? He should have been a ghost by now, unless he was still alive, or if he had indeed made it to the other side. You have done well. You have set me free, and now we shall release all these souls from this forgotten place. Tommy's body jerked and moved. At first I was relieved, since I thought this meant that he was still alive, but then I noticed that it was just his chest moving. His torso convulsed, and I was reminded of my heart thudding earlier, so loud that I thought it would burst from my rib cage. His did then, a resounding splat, and then a pillar of blood, shooting off like a geyser. I didn't understand how he still had so much blood. The lights flickered, and from somewhere came a great wind, pulling me in all directions. I thought I was back in that great fall, and I screamed. I didn't want to go back. I didn't want to go back. Let me go. I did as you asked. I set you free. Yes, we have a bargain to uphold. Everything stopped. My eyes were shut, and I did not open them, so afraid of what I might see. But as the moments ticked by and nothing happened, my curiosity began to get the better of me. I opened them. Everyone else was gone. The room was empty, save for me and Tommy. He was sitting up now, his chest still open, his beating heart visible and punctured, and he was smiling. A message from the void. Why does anyone only ever remember him?